You're the new one? The voice clicked like wet glass tapping steel. Ambassador Rae Nolan didn't flinch, though most beings would have recoiled at the sight of a telchi, 6 legs, translucent carapace, and a mouth like a flower carved from knives. Rae simply extended a hand. Rae Nolan, Earth. Safety Advisor, Class 4 Protocol. The telchi hesitated before wrapping its spindly limb around hers. The contact was cold. Too cold. It made Rae's skin prickle under her suit. Why would a Deathworlder care about safety? The telchi muttered. Rae smiled without showing teeth. Because I'm here to make sure none of you end up on the wrong side of the bars. The Xyric Zoological Observation Complex was more than a zoo. It was a statement. Suspended in the Lyrian binary system, the orbital habitat housed over 200 species from Council-adjacent planets, each confined to their own curated environments. Educational, sterile, politically useful, the human exhibit was the newest and most controversial addition. Officially, Rae had been assigned to observe safety conditions. Unofficially, she was here to figure out why the station had quietly lost 14 staff members in under a standard year. Rae walked the polished corridor that circled the human dome. Beyond the reinforced smart glass was a carefully engineered savanna biome, rolling hills, scattered trees, synthetic breeze. The illusion was good, but not perfect. The clouds didn't move quite right. The birds chirped in irregular loops. No real sky, no real danger. And yet, the humans looked comfortable. Too comfortable. Ambassador Nolan. Came a voice through her earpiece. Would you like a systems tour? Rae turned toward the speaker, a floating disc with 6 iridescent fins and a central optic. Sure, she said. Let's start with the habitat logs. Energy patterns, movement tracking, security disruptions. Security disruptions? The AI hesitated. Yes, I was told all was well. But I'm here, which suggests someone on the council isn't convinced. A beat. Understood. Uploading core data stream to your pad. Rae glanced back through the glass. Inside the habitat, a group of humans were building something near the water. Not a shelter. A tower of some sort. No reason to. It wasn't needed. The dome adjusted for weather. Food was automatically replenished. So why were they organizing? Participants are pre-contact volunteers. The AI explained as they glided down the hall. Selected from across Terran cultures. All underwent psychological screening. No history of violence. No weapons. No environmental control access. And yet you lost 14 staff, Rae said flatly. 5 were administrative anomalies. 3 left of their own volition. 6 are classified as missing, likely technical malfunctions in tracking. Rae stopped walking. Malfunctions that happened near the same section of the dome? The AI flickered. Yes. Sector B. That matched the unofficial brief. The disappearances had begun months ago, clustered near maintenance tunnels and atmospheric regulation nodes. Human accessible, technically sealed. Apparently not sealed well enough. Rae pulled up a file. Technician Vash. Last seen performing routine sensor recalibration in an access crawl beneath the dome. No distress call. No body. Just gone. The next morning, Rae visited the observation deck again. Alone, she sipped from a thermal flask as the humans went about their day. Some played a competitive game involving stone markers. Others sat in circles, talking, laughing. She zoomed in on one, Dev Malik, a botanist from Mumbai. His profile said non-confrontational, observational, peace-oriented. He was currently sharpening a stick. It was probably harmless. Maybe it was for crafting or some art project. Then he looked up, directly at the lens. The smile that crossed his face wasn't menacing, but it wasn't innocent either. It was knowing. He raised the stick like a mock salute. Rae lowered her pad. Later that cycle, Rae joined Supervisor Lechtel in the operations dome, a crystalline command center protruding above the zoo like a control tower over an airport. The telchi's spindly digits moved over the console as he displayed tracking data, drone patrols, movement maps, temperature shifts. I know what you're thinking, he said without looking at her. That we underestimated them. Didn't you? Lechtel's mandibles twitched. We can find predators before. the Slarn, the Hixroth. We've even monitored necrocolonies from the Thren worlds. But humans were assessed as social omnivores. Curious, adaptive, unarmed. Unarmed, Rae echoed. You gave them shelters, tools, control weather, abundant resources, and cameras. Lechtel's gaze narrowed. They're not just surviving, Lechtel. They're adapting the habitat to suit them. The dome isn't studying humans anymore. It's the other way around. That evening, Rae descended into Sector B. She didn't wait for backup or clearance. The entrance was a narrow maintenance shaft accessed through a sealed bulkhead. Security biometrics hadn't flagged any breaches, but Rae noticed scuff marks on the panel. Human-sized handprints on the side frame. Slightly greasy. Recent. Inside, the tunnel sloped downward, dimly lit, lined with coolant conduits and aging sensors. The temperature dropped as she moved deeper. After 20 meters, she found it. Technician Vash's toolkit. Half-zipped. A scanner lay nearby, casing cracked. Blood dried in a spray against the wall. No body. Rae knelt, inspecting the surroundings. No drag marks. No signs of struggle. Just a strange, almost surgical absence. Her comm crackled. Ambassador. We've just logged a new anomaly. Where? Same sector. Surveillance drone. Lost contact mid-patrol. Rae stared down the corridor. Locked the outer gates. No one else comes down here. Back in the habitat. The humans were now constructing some kind of frame structure from recycled plasteel strips. Rae reviewed the footage with infrared overlays. There were heat signatures in the soil beneath the project site. Too regular. Too cold. Tunnels. They'd been digging. Privately. Hidden under the false earth. No one had thought to scan below. Because who would dig inside a zoo? Lechtel stormed into the control chamber. Sensors flaring. We found bones. Rae looked up sharply. Where? Lower filtration system, east vector. 2 vertebrae segments. Not human. Later that night, Rae returned to the deck. She dimmed the lights and leaned on the glass. The humans sat around a fire. Not for heat. Not for food. Just together. Communal. One of them whispered something. Another laughed. Dev Malik looked up once more. He held a tablet, illegally modified, and scrolled. The screen flickered. A satellite uplink signature. Her jaw clenched. They'd breached the dome's network. Without external access. With nothing but makeshift parts and observation. Rae spoke softly into her recorder. They figured it out. We're not studying them anymore. They are watching us. And we are locked inside their habitat. They thought the glass was for keeping humans in. Ambassador Rae Nolan now understood it had been the other way around. The reinforced dome, the isolation, the constant surveillance, those weren't just safeguards. They were containment strategies. Ones the humans had already bypassed. She stood alone in the Habitat Control Center, watching the slow progress of construction inside the human biome. The skeletal frame had become a latticework dome of its own, built not from aggression but intention. Methodical, precise, cooperative. Dev Malik is in Sector B. Came a soft voice from behind. Rae didn't turn. How long? For hours. Entered without any observed tools. Returned 15 minutes ago through an unmonitored vent. Reported to AI. He shouldn't have access to any of that. None of them should. They shouldn't know how to evade thermal trackers either. Rae's hands tightened on the console edge. The humans hadn't broken rules. They'd rewritten the parameters. Down in the biome, a scheduled enrichment cycle activated. Artificial rainfall, program cloud cover, and protein rations delivered via drone. None of the humans reacted. They moved in synchrony, ignoring the stimuli. Their priorities had shifted. Lechtel arrived, antennae rigid with agitation. This has gone far enough, he said. I've drafted an extraction protocol. We open the dome, tranquilize them, and re-establish dominance. Rae turned to him slowly. Dominance is an illusion. You don't re-establish it. You only ever believe in it until someone else takes it away. This is a containment breach. He snapped. They're just a Class 4 species. No, Rae corrected. They were. Now there's something else. Rae returned to the tunnels beneath Sector B. This time, she wore full stealth armor, chameleon mesh, pulse sensors, kinetic dampeners. Not for war, but for truth. The understructure had changed. Human markings lined the walls, symbols drawn in soot, numbers scratched in metal. Coordinates, perhaps. Equations. Languages mixed. Urdu, English, Cyrillic, Chinese, layered like sediment. As she moved deeper, she spotted more signs. A ventilation panel unscrewed from within. A vent filter cut cleanly, not torn. A cold draft slipped across her shoulder. Someone was watching. She turned. Silence. Only when she turned back did she see it. Painted across the floor in red biodye. Please do not pet the human. She knelt to scan it. Footsteps echoed behind her. You weren't supposed to see this yet. The voice was human. Male. Calm. Rae stood, slowly. Her visor darkened to protect against light shifts, but the corridor was dim. The man before her stepped out of shadow like a memory. Dev Malik, she said. He smiled gently. I figured they'd send someone from home eventually. You bypass security. Dug under sealed infrastructure. Hijack drones. Hack comms. All from inside a cage, he added, not smug, just factual. Why? Dev's smile faded. Because they thought this was a zoo. But Earth doesn't produce exhibit animals. It produces survivors. Rae didn't move. Her HUD scanned for hostiles. None nearby. Only Dev. You're not prisoners, she said. You volunteered for observation. He nodded. We did. But somewhere along the way, we realized they weren't just watching us. They were studying how to control us. Which means one day, someone up there would try. And this is your preemptive rebellion? Dev tilted his head. Not rebellion. Insurance. Back on the station, alarms began to blink. Drones assigned to human sector perimeter patrols were dropping offline. Not from sabotage, internal override. Code no one outside Earth was supposed to understand. Lechtel's command crew swarm consoles. Ambassador Nolan is inside the tunnels. Someone chirped. Seal them. Now. I wouldn't, a new voice warned. Every head turned toward the entrance. Elandra Var, the council's political overseer, stood with folded arms, flanked by 2 guards in shimmering armor. The human ambassador was placed here under Class 4 neutral protocol, she said. Interfering with her mission will violate the council accords. Lechtel hissed. They're destabilizing the entire habitat. And yet, she replied coolly, they haven't harmed a single observer. Can you say the same for your other exhibits? A slow silence followed. Back below, Rae followed Dev into a carved chamber. It wasn't rough. It had been shaped with tools. Some 3D printed, others handmade. Data pads lined a shelf of scavenged alloy. A power core, hijacked from a decommissioned habitat sector, pulsed quietly. Why not just leave? Rae asked. We're not trying to escape. Dev said. We're testing limits. Seeing what the council allows before it acts. So far, the answer is a lot. That's dangerous. It's necessary. Every species here thinks we're a fluke, a curiosity. They can't imagine a species like us surviving without permission. He tapped a panel. Footage appeared. Alien delegates watching humans play, laugh, sleep. But what happens when the zoo realizes the exhibits have a key card? Rae exhaled slowly. You want them afraid. No, he said. We want them aware. That night, Lechtel broke protocol. He launched a Class 5 stun pulse into the habitat without council clearance. Every light in the station flickered. The dome's smart glass dimmed. Power surged and failed. When systems came back online, something was missing. The humans. All of them. Emergency teams swept the habitat. Empty huts. Untouched food. Footprints that ended mid-step. The dome's subterranean layers were pristine. No bodies. No damage. Just absence. They're gone, a technician whispered. No, Rae said quietly, stepping to the silent grass. They're here. She looked up, toward the ceiling. Then the sky changed. It shimmered, no longer a projected dome, but a message. in hundreds of languages, glowing against the simulated clouds. We were never inside. Dev's voice came through every speaker. Dear observers, we thank you for your time, for your data, for the comfort of being underestimated. Your exhibit has ended. Panic gripped the command center. Find them, Lectel screamed. Trace every signal. Elandra Var stood motionless, eyes locked on the message. They've turned the entire dome into a blind spot. They control the light, the heat, the observation. Shut it down. Someone cried. No, Rae said from behind. She stood in the doorway, bruised but calm. You shut it down. You tell every other species in the galaxy that Earth can outplay the Council with a handful of sociologists and actors. Lectel trembled. Then what do? We changed the signs. Weeks later, the human dome reopened. A new class of volunteers arrived, scientists, diplomats, performers, all aware, all participating. But this time, the observation deck bore a new plaque, mounted in silver just below the glass. Caution, Class 5A species, human. Do not interfere. Do not enter. Please do not pet the human. Ambassador Rae Nolan watched the words from the edge of the observation deck, arms folded. Around her, alien dignitaries murmured nervously, their translators working overtime to soften the language in their minds. Some were still unsure if it was a joke. Most knew better now. Inside the dome, the humans lived as if nothing had changed, teaching, farming, laughing. But to trained eyes, everything had shifted. The dome wasn't a cage. It was a stage. And the audience had just realized the performers were directing the show. A Xyrix engineer to Ray's right whispered, "They've done nothing since we reopened, not even a display of force." Rae sipped her tea. That is a display. Weeks passed. The habitat remained quiet. And then came the first request from the Thalkari diplomatic fleet. A cultural envoy asked for a joint training exercise inside the human dome. An official exchange of knowledge. Educational purposes only. Rae flagged the request immediately. Are they suicidal? Lectel hissed. No, she replied. They're curious, just like we were. And they want to see if the humans let them. After debate, the council approved a trial visit. One Thalkari instructor, unarmed, would be escorted into the dome under neutral observation, a symbolic gesture. Rae insisted on being present. The Thalkari instructor entered the dome at dusk, flanked by two humans, Dev Malik and a woman named Alina Park, a former Earth diplomat turned resident linguist. Rae watched through the deck's augmented view as they guided the insectoid Thal across the fall savanna. He asked questions. They answered. He pointed at the tower the humans had built and was told it was a library. Later, when he returned to the exit gate, he knelt in the grass and pressed his head to the ground. Why did he do that? Lectel asked, disturbed. Rae replied, because for the first time, he felt like a visitor, not an owner. Back in her quarters, Rae received an encrypted message. A single line of text. We're not staying here forever. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The humans could walk out of the dome any time now. That much was clear. And yet they didn't. Because the zoo was no longer a prison. It was a mirror. And the galaxy was still learning to look into it. Late one-night cycle. Rae descended into the habitat alone, this time with clearance and invitation. A hatch opened near the base of the biome's library tower. Dev Malik met her inside, seated beside an ancient campfire burning real wood. Somehow, real flame, she noted, imported cedar from a council garden project. He said, symbolic, controlled danger. They sat in silence. The walls were covered in pages, some printed, others handwritten. Language maps, sketches of council species, quotes, poems. You could have left, Rae said finally. Why stay? Dev's gaze flicked to the fire. Because once we left, they'd turned this place into a story about containment. They'd erased the lesson. So we stayed to keep the story alive. And what's the story? That humans don't need to escape. We just need to be understood. Across the galaxy, things began to shift. The Galactic Zoo was no longer a containment station. It became a cultural epicenter, by force of respect, not decree. Other species began applying to cohabitate, learn, collaborate. The humans accepted only a few. The criteria were unclear. But for those allowed in, the lesson was the same. Cooperation over conquest, questions over assumptions, and an unsettling sense that humans always knew more than they let on. Lechtel eventually resigned. The Zyrex couldn't reconcile being outmaneuvered by what they'd once called a class for curiosity. Rae, however, stayed. She knew Earth's real strength wasn't just adaptability. It was narrative control. They rewrote the script mid-scene, with nothing but patience, silence, and the belief that every creature underestimated the quiet ones. One solar cycle later, the Council held a summit aboard the station. During a break, a member of the Andaran Trade Guild approached Rae. "Is it true?" The creature asked. "What?" "That the humans never intended to stay here. That this entire time, they've been building something else." Rae tilted her head. "What do you think?" The Andaran shifted uneasily. "I think they don't need to build anything. They already are the weapon." By then, rumors spread of a hidden system beneath the dome. Networks of humans had quietly established. Quantum relays, sensor block bunkers, code lock vaults filled with unknown tech. A legend formed, whispered in council halls. The last exit is inside. No one knew what it meant, only that every species now tread lightly when near humans. In her final report to Earth Command, Rae wrote, "We were studied once. Then we became the observers. And now, we are the standard against which danger is measured." She ended the report with a single note. Recommendation: upgrade humanity to Class 6 potential. Suggested classification: conceptually contagious. On the 10-year anniversary of the human exhibit's opening, the dome was quietly renamed. It now bore a single engraved title: The Observatory. No bars, no signs, no glass, just paths that led inward and lessons for those willing to see. And in one forgotten corridor, deep beneath the structure, behind layers of permissions and passwords, a human child drew in chalk on the wall. Circles, arrows, maps to nowhere. A new visitor crouched beside her, uncertain. "What is it?" the alien asked. The girl smiled. "A story." The alien blinked. "What kind?" She grinned wider. "The kind where we're already out, and you just haven't realized it yet.